If you own a marketing agency and you've been looking to hire help but having a hard time, this video is for you. Let me guess, you've been on Upwork, Fiverr, or you posted an ad and got so many resumes that you got completely overwhelmed and just stopped looking through them. Or you tried to hire, God forbid, an intern and just had an awful experience because you realized that you really didn't have the time to also be training someone how to do this from the ground up. So in this video today, I'm gonna give you the argument for why you should be actually looking for talent in South America. And then I'm also going to break down the types of talent that you're going to want to hire in South America. But first, I want to get into some of the downfalls that come with hiring on Upwork or Fiverr. So a lot of you have probably hired ad hoc projects on Upwork or Fiverr. And I think Upwork or Fiverr is great for projects like that, where you're working with somebody on a one-time basis, you're able to get their attention, get a great deliverable out, and hey, if they do a good job, maybe have a working relationship in the future. I've actually seen this work pretty well for agencies, and I know quite a few agencies who do almost 100% of their video editing, their graphic design, or even their intro outro slides solely off of help that they find on Upwork or Fiverr. Where this starts to get tricky is if you actually need a full-time hire. And I see a lot of marketing agencies subbing out or depending on these freelancer platforms when in reality what they need is they need a full-time employee or they need a full-time dedicated assistant. So if you're in this second category where you've been using maybe freelance work, but now you've realized that you really need this to be a full-time role, this is 100% going to be geared towards you. And I'm gonna be talking primarily about full-time hires, although part-time hires are going to be included in this, but we're looking at more stable employment versus somebody who you're just hiring whenever you might get work in. And also, let me take a moment to say congratulations. If you're at this point as an agency owner, that's a huge deal. That's really when you start to see a difference in your monthly revenue spend or monthly revenue take home. And that's also when your business really starts to grow, when you start having a consistent need for a full-time person. Truly, congratulations. So you should be hiring in South America, not only because it's the same time zone, but also because some of the best talent in the world for marketing is actually going to be dispersed throughout the continent. And I'm also including Central America in this. Some of the best folks that I've hired for marketing have come out of primarily Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Peru, as well as parts of Central America like Honduras and El Salvador. If you've been nervous about hiring foreign workers for a full-time position or a part-time stable position, it might be because you're a little bit worried that culturally things won't translate. Let me tell you why South America is going to be your best bet. One, the language is very, very similar. Spanish to English translates very well. You're gonna wanna hire somebody who's going to be English fluent, but even those syntax or these little things that can come up when somebody is speaking English as their second language is going to be significantly lower when you're hiring somebody from a Spanish-speaking country. Additionally, a lot of the cultural components are the same when you look at Spanish media versus English media. So for example, the same type of video that would go viral in a Spanish-speaking nation is gonna be the same type of video that would go viral in a primarily English-speaking country. So I'll even see this. My feed personally is usually both in Spanish and English because I speak both. And I'll watch a video in English and then 5 minutes later see the same video reenacted in Spanish, and it's the same concept. So a lot of this virality transfers very well. So if you're looking to hire social media managers, you're looking to hire marketers, designers, anybody who gets it, that is going to be built into South American culture the same way it's built into North American culture. Additionally, you're also going to see that the schools that are in South America actually tend to teach marketing a little bit better, in my opinion, than a lot of American universities. I personally took a few marketing courses in college at the University of Texas, and one thing that I noticed is that everything seemed to be a little bit more theoretical, right? We learned a lot of the fundamentals, a lot of the basics, and then obviously the further you got along into marketing courses, things started to ramp up. In South America, a lot of the colleges almost treat marketing like a trade skill. So they're learning real life experience from the get-go. I've seen this time and time again, university students are often some of the most creative people that I've ever hired. And it's just because they're constantly using their skills, they're constantly on social media, and they're using this real life practice to make content for their classes, and they're able to cross apply that to whatever you're working on. Okay, so let's talk about the tiers when it comes to hiring. And this really goes for anywhere that you're hiring, but I'm gonna specifically talk about how this relates to South America. So for tier 1, you have your entry-level folks. For tier 2, you have your mid-level folks, and for tier 3, you have your CMO rockstar level people. So I'm gonna start with tier 1. And these are gonna be your fresh out of college or maybe still in college students. And tier 1, you're going to have to train quite a bit. And this is, I think, the biggest mistake that I see marketing agencies make. They consistently hire a virtual assistant to do marketing activities. So this is going to be somebody who is not skilled in marketing, who's entry level, and you're actually having to hold their hand through the entire process. So if you want them to create a viral video, they might have some ideas, but when it comes to execution, they're not actually trained in how to do this. And I see this time and time again. Companies will say, we need a virtual assistant for marketing. And it's really not the same. If you're a small business and you're trying to cut corners and just hire a VA to do your social media, I really think it's disadvantageous. Instead, I would hire somebody who specifically has a degree in social media, in marketing, in design, in one of these related fields, and I would work with that person. In general, entry level is entry level, but the main distinction that you need to make here is that you're not hiring a virtual assistant. You are hiring an entry level marketing person, no matter what that role may be, right? So that could be a community coordinator, that could be a community manager, that could be a social media coordinator. Any of these role titles are going to make a huge difference. If you put an ad up for a virtual assistant with, in parentheses, marketing added on at the end, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to get people who are unskilled, and you have to hold their hand the entire time. And the use case for these entry-level marketing folks is fantastic, right? So if you need someone to manage your social media page, that's great. Hire somebody who's more fresh out of college. They're going to be able to complete that. Where you start to see companies grow and really need somebody who's going to be more solid is when you get into the mid-tier range. And let me just give an example that I feel like really showcases the difference. So for example, I worked with a company who, when they were just starting out, they had 2,000 followers. They hired somebody who was fresh out of college to help maintain their Instagram. They stayed at around 2,000 followers. They might have grown to about 3,000 with some paid ads. After that person left and took a job that was more in their field, they chose to hire somebody who was mid-level. So the person that they hired ended up being about $500 a month more, and they tripled the amount of traffic going to their Instagram in literally 2 months, which is mass amounts of growth. And this is because they hired somebody who had been a community coordinator for 10 years. They also had a design background. They also knew how to edit videos and make these viral shorts. And when they moved up from that entry level to that mid-tier, that was when they started to see growth. So if you're fine with your social media not being a funnel for your business, hire entry level. If you want social media to be a funnel for your business, you need to hire somebody who's mid-tier. You're gonna see about a $500 a month difference from person A to person B, but that's when you really start to see growth. And also you have to keep in mind, sometimes if you're hiring part-time for this mid-level role, you might not be this person's only client, but they're still going to have designated reserved time for you and be consistent. Another great use case to hire mid-tier people is if you already have a marketing team. So if you have a CMO who is on staff who's US based and they need support and they need high quality executors, I highly, highly recommend hiring somebody who's in this mid-tier range, who's maybe been doing social media for about 5+ years. They know how to create viral trends. They know how to do some of the graphic design. They might have another skill set. Those are gonna be the people that help really execute and do the grunt work to take the CMO's vision and bring it to the top. Additionally, you'll notice that when you're hiring at mid-tier, you're not going to get people who are jack of all trades. People have niched down by this point. So figure out what your greatest need is. For some, that might be graphic design. For others, that might be video editing. Find somebody who's a social media manager who also has one very, very strong skill set that's going to align with your brand needs. And finally, we have tier 3. This is your CMO level. So if you are a company and you really need to push your marketing strategy, so let's say you're an e-com brand, you're a CPG brand, or something in the consumer space and you need virality, you're really depending on social media to bring you in clients or customers, you need to be hiring somebody who's a CMO level. And if you can't afford to hire in the United States, South America is going to be really, in my opinion, your best bet of getting somebody who's going to fully understand your brand and be able to make a large difference. So let me talk about somebody that we hired recently who I think was a perfect fit for this type of role. The brand that we were working was a B2B company. And in general, if you are a business to business company that needs some sort of marketing, I highly recommend hiring a CMO level. And I would actually put in your job description, you either need a head of marketing or a chief marketing officer. And the reason you're going to want to keyword it like this is because that's going to bring you in the best quality people for what you need. If you are a business to business solution, you automatically are going to need that level because your average social media coordinator isn't going to understand the complexities of selling business to business. If you're a consumer brand, you can typically get away with hiring somebody who might be more entry level. But really, if you're business to business, automatically, I really think you need to start with a CMO level. But this woman that we hired for this B2B company, she does events. She specializes in events, which is something that's so unique, but it's so necessary for this particular company. Almost 100% of their customer acquisition is done through events. So what she's done is she's created these viral events, she's promoted them, she's kept an email list, and now she's been sending out marketing campaigns to people that have attended events and are familiar with the brand. So they've seen mass amounts of growth, mass amounts of adoption because she has this specialty. So with B2B, if you are hiring as a business that sells to other businesses, you need to make sure the person that you're hiring has business to business marketing experience. Because again, it's going to be a completely different ballgame. And luckily, if you're in CPG or in e-com, you can actually get away with taking a lower level person, maybe somebody who's more mid-tier, to enact a lot of your social media campaigns. But absolutely, if you're business to business, you need somebody who's gonna be a rock star. My name is Paris Bland. I'm the founder of Digital Executive. We staff extremely high quality folks in South America for US based companies. So if you're looking for an entry level marketing assistant to help maintain current social media, if you're looking for a mid-tier person to work with your current team, or you're looking for an absolute rock star who could be your head of marketing, let us know. On average, we can save you over 50% what you would be paying in the United States and get somebody who's either going to be the same quality or higher.